Hello and welcome to another Sky Sports Fantasy Football Q&A. This week we're looking ahead to game week 17, and of course we have a lot of questions from Twitter which we're going to ask, and obviously if you want to get involved in next week's episode, make sure you go over to my Twitter on Wednesday nights. That is when I ask for your questions or dilemmas, and then we come on Thursdays and answer them. So we are starting off this week with FPL Hank's question, who says, Dunk for those who held, is he a sell or not? I'm heavily leaning towards holding, especially as I'd have to replace him with another defender, and I have no other coverage for either Brighton's single game day. So of course, with Dunk, I think the main consensus is you should sell him. He is obviously suspended for the next 2 matches, and he is on 4 yellow cards now as well, so he's probably going to get another suspension before the overhaul comes. So with his 7 games left, he's probably going to miss at least 3 of those. So for me, I do think you should sell. In terms of replacement defenders, I do think there is a couple of decent options that you can go for. I'm going to cover that in the next question. We do have another similar question coming up next, but for me, I do think you should be selling Dunk at this point. Obviously, we don't have any clean sheets from Brighton so far this season, so we are maybe looking at like a max of 20 points from Dunk from now until the overhaul, and I think you could easily cover that off with a couple of players who again are going to have up to 7 games to play still, because we're looking at Dunk having 5 points per game. If he's got 4 games left, you're looking at 20 points, and it's probably going to be the maximum, to be honest, because the clean sheets again aren't really coming, and unless he's going to score a goal, I don't really think he's going to be scoring much higher than that. So the next question comes in from Rainbird FPL, and he says, top defenders to own before the overhaul. So this is why I wanted to kind of move Hank's question on to this one, because I have prepared a quick graphic basically for my 5 defenders that I think are going to score the most points between now and the overhaul. So I do have Saliba right in the middle, because I do think he is just the best defender at this moment in time. 9 million, he's getting passing, he's getting clean sheets, and he's just basically doing very, very well. And then I've got Zinchenko, you can see him behind him, 8.8 million. Cheap enough to possibly be a Dunk replacement. He's only 0.5 more, and he is the 3rd highest scoring defender right now. He picks up tackles, he can score goals, he can get assists, he can get passes in as well, and of course he's got the clean sheets. So he is definitely one that you could maybe consider doubling up on if you wanted to go with Saliba and Zinchenko, because I think most people should definitely be having Saliba at this point as well. I've also got Romero. I think once he comes back, he's proven to be one of the best defenders before he got his red card, and he's obviously going to come back before the overhaul. We can get him back in on Thursday, which is the 7th of December. That's when his suspension's over, so getting him back in I do think is definitely going to be an option. And then we've got Trippier and Tsimikas. I do think Tsimikas, he had a week or 2 of being like a very good defender when he first came in. Then he obviously got that benching, and everyone was kind of hesitant to bring him in. But recently he has been playing very, very well, and he's been picking up a good amount of points. So I think if you've not got him, you could definitely go for him. But you kind of have to make that transfer either now or next week, at least in this game week anyway, because the last 4 games before the overhaul start to get quite difficult when you get into early December, late December quite time. So the next 3 fixtures I believe are Fulham, Sheffield and Palace, so I think if you can get them in for those fixtures, it's definitely a good one. And again, for 7.2 or 7.3 million, definitely a good pick. And then of course Trippier as well. It does cover off a captaincy for next Thursday if you don't have one of those yet. So you could possibly go for that if you're looking for a Newcastle defender. But again, Newcastle's fixtures are fairly decent all the way up to the overhaul, and Trippier of course being one of the highest scoring defenders so far this year. I think again could be a very good option. But in terms of other picks, obviously we do have Anderson and stuff right now. I do think you probably want to be moving him on, I think, next Thursday for Romero. But in terms of Dunk replacements, I think these guys are all priced enough that you can go for them. And if you're desperately needing a defender, I think one of these guys is definitely the ones to go for. Our next question comes in from Dave Hannigan, who says the best Alisson swap to hold through to the overhaul. So, of course, Alisson has been ruled out for the next couple of weeks. I believe he should be back for the game against Man United, so I think that's 3 games he's going to be missing. So obviously a lot of people will have someone like Kelleher on their minds, but I think it's more of a short-term option. I think if you've got 40 plus transfers, Kelleher's, like, if you wanted to gamble, could always go for him. But I think Sanchez is definitely a decent pick because, of course, it does cover off that Christmas Eve captaincy against Wolves. But again, I think when you're looking at the goalkeepers, you are just wanting to cover any captaincies that you're missing. I have put together 3 goalkeepers that I do think are probably going to be the best up to the overhaul. Nick Pope, just because, again, Newcastle have fairly decent fixtures, and he is just one of the better goalkeepers this year. He's picking up saves, he's picking up clean sheets, one of the only goalkeepers that is doing it so far. Johnson does cover the captaincy against Brighton if you were maybe relying on Dunk, and you no longer have a captaincy for that day. Johnson could definitely cover that, and then of course Sanchez does also cover the Christmas Eve captaincy. So I think as long as you're trying to cover captaincies where you can, that would be the best option. And of course I do think the budget keepers who are picking up saves are probably the best ones to go for this year, at least up until the overhaul anyway. Next up is a question from Streaky, who says, I'm planning to get cash out after the Bournemouth game. I've got nothing in the bank and I'm on a back 3 with Saliba and Tsimikas. What defender under 7.7 million would you say is the best replacement? I think with 7.7 you're just under the threshold of decent defenders. Obviously Tsimikas would have been the number 1, but you already do have him. So 7.7 million, you're really only looking at maybe a Doge as an option, but he is on 3 yellow cards, and obviously Spurs defence isn't looking fantastic right now. And then maybe Lascelles at 6.6, but we don't really know how long Botman has of his injury. I think they're still kind of waiting to see if he needs a scan, so he could be an option, but again I think he is quite risky. So you're looking at your 7.7 million, you've really only got 2 options. So you could even maybe, I don't know, it's a very difficult budget to have. I think if you can make another transfer, or you're planning on making another transfer, so that you can free up some budget for cash and maybe move on to someone like Romero next week, I'd definitely be doing that, because I think cash to Romero looks like a good transfer with you being able to give cash the Bournemouth game. But 7.7 million, there's not really too many options you can go for, so I'd even maybe consider keeping cash until you can free up the budget to move him on for a more expensive defender. But under 7.7 million, I think you're only really looking at Edogie and Lascelles. Our next question comes from Ian, who says, would it be worth transferring Saka in for Bowen and captaining him on Saturday against Wolves? Also, I'm thinking of going Dunk to Romero next week for Spurs cover for captaincy days too, then just leave it until the overhaul. Can't take any more reds or injuries. So the thing with Saka is something I was kind of looking at when I was looking at my own transfers up to the overhaul. I've got him down for the best captaincy twice this game week. After that, I've only got him down once, and it's a game, I think in the 20th, I think it's game week 20 or something. I've got him down as the best captaincy for one day. So after this week, you're really only looking at captaining him once, so I don't think bringing him in is really that necessary. And then you're also talking about bringing Romero in as Spurs captaincy, so I think I would rather be bringing in Son than Bowen for that transfer, because you are getting more captaincies out of Son. I think I've gotten three captaincy days up until the overhaul, so it's 2 more than you got from Saka. He's a lot cheaper as well, so you're freeing up some budget. But in general, I do think Bowen is probably going to be fit for this week, so I think if you can keep him, I definitely would, especially with you saying can't take any more reds or injuries. I think you're probably lacking a bit on transfers, so I think if you can keep Bowen, I definitely would look to do so. But Dunk to Romero, obviously you are missing 1 game still doing that, so maybe I don't know, it's a tough one. Like, it's kind of just Romero's suspension is 1 week later than we would expect it to be, because then it would just be an easy transfer from Dunk to Romero. But in terms of doing your I do think getting Romero in is good, but I definitely think if you're going to be transferring someone in for Bowen, I think I'd definitely be preferring Son over Saka because of the upcoming captaincy days. Our next question comes from Chris, who says, I've held Odegaard through his injury. Do you think he'll represent value for money up until the overhaul, or is there better alternatives? Currently I'm on a 3-5-2 with Salah, Odegaard, Son, Gross and Palmer. I think if you've held Odegaard through his injury this whole time, it would probably be a bit of a waste to then take him out once he's back. I think your midfield looks great so far, and obviously the obvious replacement for Odegaard would probably be Saka. So I think having Odegaard, you're really just going up against Saka, and as I just explained there, Saka doesn't really have any more single game days, so I think with Saka being able to pick up more tiers, with Odegaard being able to pick up more tiers, picking up shots, possibly picking up tackles as well, I do think you've probably got a decent differential to go up against Saka, so I think I'd honestly just be keeping him there, especially since you have held him this whole time. I definitely wouldn't be making that transfer now that he is back, so I think the midfield looks great, you've got captaincies covered, and I think just going with that and hoping that Odegaard outscores Saka over the next few weeks is definitely the best bet there. So the next question comes in from Stu, and he says, is Mbeumo necessary pre-overhaul? Many seem to be saying so, but I really don't see it. Honestly, I don't think he is, to be honest. I think he's a bit of a premium move for those who have a lot more transfers than the majority of us. I think he will definitely probably be good. I say will definitely probably. He will probably be good up until the overhaul. He does have good fixtures, and he is in some decent form as well, but we don't need him in Sky really. He doesn't have any captaincy days. I think he probably looks like more of an FPL option, but I really don't think he is a necessity as you've worded it, but I think if you've got transfers to burn and you're looking for some differentials, I definitely think he is a decent one, especially on Saturdays. Could be a decent captain against Luton, but if you're kind of struggling with transfers, looking to kind of pull back, I definitely don't think you are going to need Mbeumo. Our next question comes in from GG Magpie, who says, I still own Nakamba and Diaby in the second team. Which players would you replace them with? So I think the obvious replacement for Nakamba is Palmer. It does seem to be a popular one, same position, being both midfielders, roughly the same price. But you're just going to have to watch out with Palmer and see what happens with Nkunku when he comes back. Again, if Nkunku starts taking penalties, it does take a big chunk away of Palmer's value. You could also look at Tsimikas if you can get him. Again, I would try to do that this week to get the most out of the next 3 games for Liverpool. And Lascelles, again, bit of a risky one, but if you wanted to take that risk, if we get any more news on someone like Botman, then I think you probably could get that. Again, maybe not up until the overhaul. I think Botman would definitely be back before then. So if you've got the transfers available, Lascelles in, you are going to want to be taking him out again soon. In terms of Diaby, I think you give him the Bournemouth game at the weekend, and then I would bring him out and get in Romero. I think that is the obvious pick. But again, as we were saying, if you've got the transfers there, someone like Mbeumo could be quite good. But I definitely think Romero is going to be the go-to transfer for next week. And our final question of the day comes in from GT Sky FF, who says, is the 30 transfer target for the overhaul still realistic for those of us hovering around 33 to 35 at the moment, given the number of red cards and injuries this season? I definitely think it's still viable. You're just going to have to pull back a bit if you've been using a lot of moves. I think 33 to 35 is still like a big jump. Like, I've got 33 in my second team and I'm feeling quite wary, but I've got 35 in my first team and I feel quite comfortable. I've looked at both teams and I'm really only planning 3 up until the overhaul, so that's going to leave me with 32 and 30. I think if you can get in Romero, that is one transfer in the bag. And if you've got Anderson, then you're taking him out for Romero. That's a straight swap. If you've not got Son, I think you are going to need him for the captaincies coming up in December. So that's a transfer. And then realistically, I don't know if you really need anything else. I think as long as you've got captaincies covered, most of the popular players are covering those anyway. Haaland, Salah, Saka, Son are kind of covering off most of the captaincies. Watkins has a captaincy day that most of us are covering off as well. Likes of Chelsea Wolves, I think you could skip that day if you have to. It's a Wolves Chelsea game. You're going to be bringing them in on Christmas Eve and taking them out a week later. So if you're struggling for transfers, I don't think you need to make that move. Palace Brighton, maybe you need to get Dunk out. That's a move. I really don't think you have to make much more than something like 3 transfers. In terms of essential transfers, obviously if we get red cards and injuries, it's always good to have 1 or 2 in the back. But 33 right now, I think you're in a good spot. to finish on 30 at the overhaul. I think if you're on 32, 31, you might just end up on about 28, 29 if you're trying to really conserve them. But I think 33 to 35 at the moment, you're definitely still on track, as long as you are just making like needed moves and you aren't bringing in people that you know need to come back out before the overhaul. But that is all of our questions done for this week. Once again, thank you to everyone who sent them in. Again, next week, if you want to be involved, just head over to Twitter on Wednesday night, and I will put the tweet out asking for your dilemmas or questions there. But once again, thank you all for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next video.